Hey woodworkers. So I thought it'd be helpful to talk about calculating out the materials that you're going to need for building a project. So what you see here is a fairly typical situation where I'm partway through a project. I've got joinery cut obviously on this board. These boards are stickered and waiting on being translated into joining that piece and becoming a thing. Can't overemphasize the importance of the sticker conversation, so I'm going to take a moment just to discuss again why we do it. First of all, these stickers we need to have the same thickness all the way across, so that this one over here, this one over here, those are the same thickness. When we put the other board on top of it, it's not ramping up or down, or if you have multiple stickers on a row, it's not creating this problem. These two are the same thickness for themselves. It's obviously thicker than this, so these cannot go on the same layer. So that goes over there. These being the same thickness, this is perfect for what we need to do. And then I'll load this one up. And then when I'm creating these stickers, I want to make sure to line them up the best I possibly can. If this one is off by a little bit, if it's off by a lot, I know I'm going to have trouble, because all the weight coming on this is going to compress this board where it's not supported, and that starts giving me trouble. So keeping these things in alignment as best as I can, that's what I'm doing and hoping for success. And by doing that, then I'm in good shape. A lot of people do this extra step where they sticker these things up, put another board here which they don't care about, and then just weight the heck out of this thing and start really putting a lot of pressure on this. And it's not a bad idea. I just think that it's the amount of pressure that you would need to make a difference is pretty substantial. And I don't know if we're talking about parking your car on your boards, but I wouldn't rule it out. So whatever's heavy on top of this that you could put a lot of boards here, I think it's more of a mental reassurance that you're doing everything possible to make sure these boards don't copper twists or any of that. So not a bad practice. I have done it myself. I just don't know if I've ever seen benefits of doing it. I think this is far more important than weighting something on top of this. The stickers allow for air to circulate all the way around, and that's kind of the critical piece. If we don't have these stickers here and we just put one board facing the other, then any movement or any evaporation of moisture that has been released after we have planed these faces, then it's going to start to look for areas to escape, and usually it starts to curl, and then it'll have that area to escape. So just take a moment to make sure you have enough stickers available, and then you'll have a successful project. Alright, so calculating board footage. If I can scale back here. Alright, so what I do on every project, which I'm not sure if you can see this or not. For every project, I do a full-size drawing. These lines are pretty light. So this project, or this drawing that you're looking at, illustrates this view here. So I've got the side of this project, and this thing that I'm making is a synthesizer for a musician, and so the front is going to be open, and there's going to have a bunch of modules here for controlling. It's kind of amazing what this thing is. But I needed to know overall dimensions of this stuff. This will start to get shaped once I'm ready and everything is joined. Before I glue it together, I'll start creating those. I've drawn in the joinery, which you might not be able to see, which is well after the fact. What I needed to do is make sure that I had enough room front to back, and then enough clearance in these areas for those modules to extend out of the back. So full-size drawings are so critical for what we're doing, because there's really no area for us to have any surprises. And the other thing that's really great is that we can make all the mistakes that we need to on paper before we start pulling into buying wood. Yeah, professionalism. All right, so anyway, what I was able to ascertain here are a couple dimensions. So I know what's based on the parts that fit here. I know my overall width for the top piece, and so let's illustrate it here. I know the overall height, because again, these modules need to have a specific space and all of these things, and I can't be too short. If it's too tall, then I'm going to have larger gaps between the rows of these modules, and that just doesn't work. So I want to make this as tight as I possibly can, and then once I have those dimensions, then I start drawing in these facets or curves on what will be the front edge of these side pieces. Then the base. I will always want to have the base larger than the top. If that were reversed, then this would be very top heavy and start tipping. So I just needed to figure out what I needed to do in order to make all this stuff work. Once I've done that, then I can start calculating out my material costs. Or not, I'm sorry, my material requirements, and the costs come later. So on this board here, which you cannot see, still can't see, I have drawn in what it is that I need to purchase for. So the sides, I have my overall width, 12.5 inches. I've drawn this in here in the bottom, multiplied by the length, which is going to be 22.5, and that gives me this number. So I've done my board footage calculation, which is thickness times width times length divided by 144. That gives me 1.95 total board feet for this side. So I have that, but since I have two sides, I need to multiply that times 2. That gives me, it was right around 3.9 board feet. I just went ahead and rounded that up to 4. Top, to the same dimension, or same calculation there, that equals 1.4 board feet. I only have one top. Now I just rounded that up to 1.5. Bottom, let's do together. So for the bottom, I have, this is probably going to be wildly frustrating and annoying, but I'm going to do it anyway. Alright, so I've got 1 inch times the width, which is 12.5, times the length, which is 23, equals this giant number. And I divide that by 144, and that gives me, I'm going to call that 2 feet. So for the bottom, there we are. For the bottom, I have 2 feet. Alright. So those are the only parts that are going to be made out of solid wood. The back, I'm going to use some sheet goods for that, so I don't need to calculate that. I just need to know what size of sheet I need to purchase or cut. So that is my board footage calculation. Once I have all of these numbers, I need to add them all up for a total, and then once I have the total, which is going to be 4 plus that's 3. That's 5.5 plus that's 7.5. So I need 7.5 board feet total for this project. I'm going to add on some extra material here just to be safe, and so in doing so, focus area. So in doing so, I've got enough material for everything that I need, plus a little bit of extra. When I draw in this curve here, which you can't see, but whatever that curved piece is going to be, there's all of this is going to start to become waste, and I can't really calculate out for that, but I know that I need to have it. So anyway, so providing for that, I'll know the material that I need, plus a little bit extra. Sometimes when you get boards, there are problems that are inherent in the material. We've talked about checks, so things down at the end of the board. Can you see that? Right. So if there were a check down here, checks typically happen towards the ends. If you see a check or a void here in the field or the center of this board, that's a major problem, either with how this tree was felled and the trauma that created the stresses in here to compromise the cell structure, or they dried it unevenly. So if you see something like this on a board where you have checks in the center, run away from that thing. Checks on the end, not a huge deal, and that's kind of where I expect it, because as this moisture leaves the board, it always leaves from the end. And so I'm expecting to see them here. If they're not there, great. I need to check for moisture on these boards, and for the most part, if you're using a good reputable lumberyard, they will have already done so because they realize that if they don't check it, they get angry customers coming back. That's a good way to not be in business for very long. So I always bring my moisture meter with me. I have a two-pronged thing, so I check in here, and it checks for resistance. The easier the signal is from this prong to the next, that tells me that there's more moisture content, and it'll show up in the meter. If you're going to go on faith, that's great. I would encourage everybody to buy a moisture meter for doing this process. But if you go on faith, that's good. And if you've been working with a place for years, then you'll kind of know that they have quality product. So if I have good moisture content between 6 and 8%, I have any defects here. Let's say I have a check. Let's say I have some type of a knot or something here. I know that I need to cut out that area or I'm going to lose part of that. And that's fine. I just need to make sure to visually sight this thing and make sure that I'm not running into a problem. So knots I could work with, I just need to calculate where they are. If this happens in a place where I need to cut this off and cut this off, that knot is no longer a problem, and then I just work from here down and from there up. The checks, if I do have one of these things down, what I do is I look for where this check ends. So this comes to a peak, I don't see it anymore, and then I plan on another 2 or 3 inches in, and from that point, that's where I start measuring. I don't want to get anywhere near that check because if I were to use this as part of my final project, then there's no guarantee that's not going to continue to open up over time. So watch for this, watch for inclusions like knots or other stuff. And then I also kind of sight down the edge to make sure that this is flat. If this board has a twist or a bow to it, then I want to avoid those because I know that just means more material I'm going to have to waste in the milling process. Sometimes you can get away with it, but as straight, as clear of material as I can possibly find, that's really what I'm after. Once I've done that, then I start looking at my drawings and I start measuring this thing out. Okay, this is not wide enough to get that 12.5 inches that I need, so that I know I need to do something like this, where I glue a little piece on where I need that curve. So this more than makes up for the dimension I need. And then at the top, I'm over where I want to be for my full-size drawings. I wouldn't know that if I hadn't brought my drawings with me. So reference those things. Whenever I go to the lumber yard, I bring 2 things. I usually bring chalk because it's easy to mark up boards. This is not chalk, but easy to mark up boards. I also bring a block plane. If this is a rough sawn board, sometimes I have a tough time really seeing the grain. So with that block plane, I can start taking off some of the material and really see what's happening in there. And that usually doesn't raise any eyebrows or put people's hackles up at the lumber yard. It may, but if you're spending money there, I think that their interest is keeping you happy. So it's an easy conversation to have. If you are ever in doubt about moisture content, then feel free to ask the lumber yards if they can check for you. And they have moisture meters floating around. That might annoy them because they have to stop what they're doing to go and get it. But yeah, instead of buying a couple $100 worth of wood or more, you'll definitely want to know what you're getting before you buy it, because once you bring it back, it's just a pain to return it. Sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not possible to return it. They give you credit, which doesn't really help you. So anyway, those are the things to consider. Make sure you have your drawings, make sure you know and have calculated out your total board footage plus about 15 to 20% extra, and then have fun. I think this is the most exciting part of woodworking, is when you get to the place where you're ready to start the project physically. So you've already started it by doing the design work, doing the calculations, envisioning where this is going to go, how it's going to be used, but then being able to select this material is usually what draws us woodworkers into this craft. And so enjoy this process. It's pretty fantastic. Okay. Hopefully that's helpful. Thanks, everyone.